Wednesday morning, and welcome to another edition of Distance Learning 101. I'm Greg Ellis with the Tupelo Public School District, and today we are joined by Jody Thompson, a kindergarten teacher at Joyner. And Ms. Thompson, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And what do you have planned for us today?
Today, I'm going to talk about preparing your child for kindergarten.
Oh, that's a big thing coming up.
That is a big thing coming up.
And with the coronavirus, we were not able to have all of our summer camps that already did that, like the ones we have at the Discovery Camp at ECEC. So this will be a huge show for our parents to get a grasp of how to prepare for school.
Yes.
All right, well, let's dive in. What do you have planned for us? How are we gonna teach today?
All right. Well, I'm just going to talk to you as if you're the parents,
Okay.
or the guardian, and you need to prepare your child for kindergarten because
Great.
this is a huge step. And I know that lots of parents or guardians are very worried,
Right.
because they're sending their baby off to kindergarten,
For
the first time, and this will be their first year in big school.
Right.
And so it's naturally to feel nervous, to be worried about how they're going to do. And so these are just some simple things that you can do to prepare them when they get to school for the first day.
Awesome. It is a big adjustment. I remember my kids 100 years ago taking them to kindergarten, and I'm not sure if it's worse for the parents or the kids.
Exactly. I think parents cry just as much as the kids
Agreed.
do that day. I know I was one. So, okay, the first thing that we're going to talk about is independence and responsibility.
Okay.
That's a huge thing that parents may not think about. They kind of tend to think about the academic side of things, but there are other things that you can do to prepare them to get ready, and just to kind of make them more confident in going.
Gotcha.
And so one of the first things is you can have them start dressing themselves. I know that sounds simple, but sometimes as parents we get into the rush of the morning. Let me just help you get this on. But right now, while we're in the slow of summer, this would be a great time for them to start dressing themselves, learning to button and unbutton, zip and unzip, put on their coats, put on their shoes independently. Now would be a great time to teach them how to tie their shoes.
I was going to ask, when do most kids learn to tie?
They begin learning how to tie their shoes in kindergarten.
Gotcha.
The fine motor skills that we're going to talk about later that are developing at this time. And some come to kindergarten already knowing how to tie their shoes, but this is usually the year that we want them to start learning how to tie. And then, and putting their backpack on independently. They'll put it upside down, they'll forget to unzip it, and zip it, and things are falling out. So this is the perfect time to kind of go over those little routines.
Small, but they're big things.
Exactly. In the scheme of things throughout the day, those add up to be huge.
Exactly. So parents, please take note. We need your help.
All right. The other thing is just basic hygiene needs. And of course, right now, in the midst of what we're in right now, that is crucial. And then they need to be able to go to the bathroom independently. Think about when you and I take when our children were little and we were in public, restaurant, movie, mall, we went with them.
Right.
But at school, teachers don't go with them.
Right.
So just kind of go over that procedure with them and make sure they're washing their hands correctly. Of course, right now, that is crucial.
I think we all know how to wash our hands now. Which I don't know if I would have said that 3 months
ago. But now, yes, now would be a great time for them to learn to count to 20.
Okay.
As they're washing their hands, count to 20 and tell them, okay, now you're good. Make sure they're using soap. I know a lot of times they'll just splash the water and they'll think that's good, but count or learn a song, to sing while they're washing their hands.
Right.
Or a nursery rhyme, anything like that. And then, and give them more responsibility. Surprisingly, a 5-year-old loves responsibility. Put up their toys.
Okay.
Place clothes where they belong. If their dirty clothes are in the floor, have them put it in the hamper. Simple things like that we tend to do for them.
Right.
They're now at the age where that becomes more their responsibility. And they actually can do it.
They can.
They can. As parents, we kind of get in that hurry and let me just do it for you. But they can do.
Do you think that helps with behavioral issues if they come to school knowing how to do these things to take care for themselves? Are they usually a little bit more well behaved?
I do.
Okay.
Because they have that I can do this.
Right.
The I can't unzip this.
Right.
Kind of can start escalating into a behavior issue.
Gotcha.
And so,
And that makes complete sense.
yeah, like if you go swimming this summer, you know, okay, we're home, take your wetsuit, you know, have
Right.
them responsible for taking their wetsuit out. Or if they're at the park and they've had a Frisbee, all right, let's go put our stuff back where it belongs.
Right. Right.
And just those little responsibilities. In my classroom, we had, every child had a job every
Okay.
afternoon. And so when we started leaving, you know, I had a sweeper, I had table cleaner, they picked up pencils, they knew what their job was, and they loved it. And they took it seriously.
So would you rotate those responsibilities throughout the year?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
And so they could all have their, you know, and there were some they didn't really like.
Well, welcome to adulthood.
But that's life, and so, you know, we learned how to, you know, well, this is just how we'll have to do it, and they did, and they were fine with it.
Well, they take ownership of it.
That's it, and that's when the behavior starts. You know, you see in positive behavior because when they take responsibility for it, they want it to be right,
Exactly.
and they want to do a good job. So, and so those are just when school returns. Also in August, they're going to be responsible for their own stuff. In kindergarten, in the past, we've kind of had more of a community supply.
Right.
And now when we're coming back in August, we're going to have more of their own supplies that they'll need to be responsible for and keep up with.
And parents will not have to buy supplies this year.
Correct.
It's providing that for them to ensure that everything is safe and meets the standards that we're looking for. And hopefully this will cut down on any type of spreading of germs or anything.
Exactly. And they'll have it in their own container by them at all times.
Exactly.
So, but we just, if they know how to kind of keep up with a few things coming in, that'll just make that transition smoother.
Right, exactly.
All right, so that's independence and responsibility.
Okay.
Easy, but at the same time, sometimes you have to have a lot of patience as a family when you're starting to give them
They're
more
not gonna pick it up
independence. They're
immediately.
not.
Right.
And so when you're rushing out the door and they're still putting on their shoes, you just have to say, okay.
But they did the other 4 things right.
Right,
So-
right.
Do you have any, I mean, we talked about cleaning up their room. Anything specific that might could help the parents during this training time this summer? Like, all right, at a specific time, like I would imagine you had your job duties for your kids 2:30 or 2. To help with that routine, would you suggest, okay, at 3 o'clock, they're going to learn to tie their shoe today. We're going to tie it every day or do this. Or should you not do a routine like that because sometimes, you know, we can change throughout the course of the day.
Of the day, especially in the summer, because you're not necessarily on such a tight schedule.
Right.
And so just kind of, I would suggest in the summer, just as it kind of lends itself.
Okay.
And then kind of in your head, okay, we're about to go to the park. Whereas I would just, okay, let's slip on your shoes and go. Take another 10 minutes before you get ready to go and say, okay, we're going to go to the park. Let's get ready.
Right.
And have them more of the independence and the responsibility part of it. So, and it's not, every time you get ready to go somewhere, it's not going to be that smooth.
Right.
You know, there are going to be times, we as parents know that they're just going to,
I'm like that every morning when I get up. I don't know what's about to happen. And if you go to the park, you can have them pack their own lunch.
yes,
Put it in a Ziploc bag. Pour their own
practice
juice.
having them
Yes.
open and close that. That's huge when it comes to
I
lunchtime.
love this. I think this makes so much sense.
All right, so now we're going to talk about social foundations. And what social foundations are is just basically appropriate interactions with others.
Okay.
And it's something that we may not think of, but it's extremely important for both students and the student and the teacher.
Is it basically forming social skills? Okay.
That's exactly what it is. And so in kindergarten, that's one of our big focus is for social foundations. You know, making friends, keeping friends, how to interact with each other. One of them is sharing with others.
Ooh.
And when we share, we're not necessarily talking about just sharing things, but we're sharing time, we're sharing space, and just those kind of elements.
Would you say sharing, particularly with toys, is one of the most difficult things kids learn? Because
Yeah.
they're used to it. It's mine, mine,
It's mine. Like
Yeah.
when I'm home, those blocks are mine.
Right.
But when I'm at school, they're everyone's. So that can be a learning curve for some.
I just remember my kids. He's touching my stuff.
Yes, same here. Also, having a conversation with others as the speaker and the listener. As children, they tend to always want to be the speaker,
Yes,
and not necessarily the listener. And so, engage in that conversation and letting them know that, you know, when you're not talking, you need to actually actively listen. And so, that's something we go over a lot.
learning is such a key skill to have, and it carries over for the rest of your life.
It does.
The earlier you learn,
Yes.
the more you know.
And just being polite to other students and adults and being able to talk about their feelings versus showing action. You know, sometimes they want to just melt down or get frustrated, and if they just say, well, I'm upset because I want the blocks as well, you know, instead of just kind of having a meltdown. And receiving the word no, or receiving the word, well, we have to wait.
Right.
Because sometimes for a 5-year-old, that's hard.
Very hard.
And then just following basic directions. You know, and you may have to start with the one step. Go get your shoes.
Right.
And when they've done that, okay, now get your hat.
Would you suggest to parents maybe somewhere in the house having a list of directions that they would follow? Oh, okay.
We used to have brushing teeth. We'd say, you know, wet your toothbrush, put the toothpaste on, you know, rinse.
Go
You know,
right
just like, and it can be pictures. You can just draw a little picture.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have more with Ms. Thompson on getting ready for kindergarten. Welcome back to Distance Learning 101 here on ABC WTVA. We are with Joyner's Jody Thompson, kindergarten teacher, Ripley native,
Ripley
Ole Miss
native.
graduate. We're talking about preparing students for kindergarten during the summer so that when, I guess they come ready-made almost for you. All right.
A little better prepared.
Much better prepared. And probably a lot of parents are doing these things and maybe not even realize
Exactly.
that they're doing it.
That they're doing
But
it.
if you're not, let's go ahead and do this so it makes for a much easier transition from home to school for your child.
Exactly.
So we talked about preparation. Now, what are we going to discuss?
We're going to talk a little bit about routines.
Okay.
That can be a natural thing for some kids, and for some kids, a routine can be different.
Yes.
But children do thrive with routines.
And adults.
And adults, as we all know, the last few months, I think everybody has lost all routine and all schedules. I know at our house, they don't even exist anymore.
Exactly.
And so before school starts, you want to take a few weeks and kind of start preparing them with earlier bedtimes. You want to make sure that they're going to bed at the same time on school nights, especially. You know, Sunday through Thursday night, let's have a consistent bedtime, 7:30, 8. And then wake up the same time on school mornings.
For kindergartners, what, and it may not be a fair question to ask you, but are there studies or research that shows the amount of sleep that's ideal for, you know, a 4 or 5 year old?
Yes, it's more than you probably think.
Really?
They need to be at 5 and 6 years old. They need to be in the bed about 7:30.
Okay.
And so that their natural wake up time is around 6.
Okay. So
6:30. So it's a
almost 11 and a
longer
half
span.
hours.
And so also remember, we don't take naps in kindergarten.
Right.
Whereas at preschool they may have. So they're gonna be tired.
Right.
Because they may be used to that nap that they won't have.
Gotcha.
And
Like we're going to be when we go back.
Exactly. We're going to want naps and earlier bedtimes. And so just establish that morning and night routine.
Okay.
That will help them. It'll also make going to bed easier.
Right.
If they kind of know, okay, my show is over, you know, if maybe they watch a little show before they go to bed, this would be a great time to incorporate a bedtime story. Just to kind of, you know, we've taken our bath, we've brushed our teeth, now we're going to read a story, now it's time for bed. And it'll kind of ease their brain will start transitioning to, okay, I've got to start going to sleep now.
Right.
And then when you wake up in the morning, always allow for enough time for at least a little bit of interaction. If they eat breakfast at home, even if it's just a cereal bar or something easy, you know, sit down with them for those few minutes while you're drinking your coffee. Or if they eat breakfast at school, just have a little conversation with them.
Okay.
You know, I want you to have a good day at school. You know, I can't wait to see you this afternoon. Just to kind of get their brain transitioning to, okay, I've got to go to school mode versus home mode.
Right.
So it's just a good way to get them settled into a good school routine, because we are all about routines at school.
And they'll pick up on that.
Oh, they will.
Your body adjusts, especially the sleep patterns at that age.
At that age, it does. And now we're going to talk about a few academic things. And so one thing we're going to talk about is print awareness. And what that is just being aware that print is all around you. It's not just in a book. Of course, one of the most important things you can do is read all the time. Anything, just read to them. It can be a bedtime story, or it could be what we call environmental print, road signs, billboards, restaurant signs. They're going to recognize the word Walmart.
Right.
They're going to recognize McDonald's, and just kind of talk to them as they're going, as you're in the car. Stop. We're at the stop sign. Just make them aware that print is not just in books; it's everywhere, and then they'll pick up on a lot just naturally.
And you're building your vocabulary
Exactly.
earlier. I love that. Yeah.
And then you can also go to the library and check out at Lee County Library or your local library.
And our libraries are now open.
And they are open again, and have them pick a few books for you to read to them. And once you've read it a couple of times, you'll see they have that book, and they're just retelling it, but they think they're reading. So there's that confidence that they've gained,
Right.
and just in handling the book.
Right.
The left to right and the turning the page. And then there's always ebooks available. You can get them at your library. You can get them at your school library. You can, find a search online that you can put on their iPad,
Right, and there's
or
a lot
on
of
the
free
phone.
programs
There are
for
lots
books
of
as
free
well.
programs, especially right now,
Right.
with schools having been closed. A lot of free programs for ebooks.
You can do it on your phone, your iPad. I mean, you've got so many avenues in which to watch or read the books.
Exactly. It does not have to be a certain device.
Right.
And then, and you can even have them write out a grocery list. It may just be pictures, or it may be scribble, or they can write a thank you note, or they can write a note to their grandmother. Maybe they haven't seen her in a while, or an aunt, or somebody that's special to them. And just know that drawing is writing. It's just the early steps.
You're still expressing yourself.
Exactly, and that's what writing is. And sometimes as teachers, that's one of the hardest things for us to help gain their confidence in, is writing, because they know what it's supposed to look like, but they can't get there.
Right.
And so they struggle with that. They kind of, I can't. But if they've already kind of had a little bit of experience, even if it's a scribble, or if it's, they drew an apple and an orange for the grocery list, yes, that's great,
Right.
Okay, now we're going to talk about their names.
Okay.
And names are very important to them. Of course, it's their special, unique name, but being able to recognize their name in isolation and within a group is important, because their name is going to be everywhere in their room, on everything they own, all in the room, cubicles, on the door, outside the door. And so there's just an excitement when they come in the first time and their name is everywhere, and they can see it and they recognize it, and it just helps with that excitement and build that excitement. And so you can have them practice writing their name. Now, if they don't know how to write their name, don't panic. It's okay. We're going to work on that a lot at the beginning of the year. But just if they can write the first letter, or if they come to school and maybe the letters are there but they're not in the right order, or if they're back, some of the letters are backwards, it's okay. We're going to fix all that, and so that's why we have school. But it does kind of get them ready to, you write your name on stuff, and so it just kind of gets their brain ready for what's to come.
So we're almost halfway through the month of June. Would you suggest that parents start practicing their names and doing things now if their child isn't already at that point to where they...
I would.
Okay.
This would be the perfect time. It gives you a good solid month and a half to get ready for that.
Okay.
And they can count the letters in their name. They can know that there's 5 letters in my name. They can make it with Play-Doh. They can just have fun with it.
Right.
They can write it in the sand. Anytime you can have that opportunity there. And then, and also let them know how they got their name. We talk about that a lot, like, why did you name me what you named me?
Right.
And there's sometimes a really special story behind, and that just gives them a little bit ownership to it as well.
I love that.
And that we like to talk about that in our room. How did they get that?
Especially if you're named after someone.
Yes, it kind of, just gives you a little background. And then, and you also need to get motor skills. And so you have gross motor and you have fine motor skills.
All right, you're going to tell us the difference.
I am. So gross motor skills are your large muscles. It's what you think of when you go to exercise.
Okay.
Jumping, hopping, skipping, jumping rope, riding a bike, anything you use your large muscles.
Okay.
And so that's key for them to get, the energy out, and also it just makes brain connections.
Okay.
And so that's kind of an easy one. A 5-year-old naturally does a lot of those things. And then fine motor is more grasping.
Okay.
And so I tell my kids at school we have to exercise our fingers just like we have to exercise our legs and our arms and our heart, because that helps them hold a pencil, it helps them cut, helps them put puzzles together. Anything that you manipulate with, and a manipulative can be anything. At school we might use letters, you might use counters to count. Those are what we call manipulatives.
Okay.
Play-Doh, it can be anything that they can move from one thing to another or use to count right. That's a manipulative.
You got some examples.
And I have some examples.
So we're going to close the show with some good examples.
Some good examples. Okay, so these are just I got from my house.
Okay.
So it's not anything that you've got to go out and buy. So I got some flour because I had more flour than I did sugar. If you have more sugar, salt, sand, anything like that, and they can just write their name in the. So there's their name, and it may not be perfect, and then they can write.
But we're not looking for perfection here.
We're not. The
skill.
Motion.
Exactly.
They need the motion of it. You can also take Play-Doh and they can roll out their name, or you could get stampers, or they can even get like a toothpick, and if you space it out enough and then they take a toothpick, they can write it, or they could roll and make the letters and shape it, and then that gets that fine motor. Play-Doh and clay really helps with the fine motor, getting those fingers together. And then anything that they have to pinch. So, and you can also use a paper plate. You don't even have to have a tray. Anything that they can put it on. You can also use shaving cream. Put them some shaving cream there, or some whipped cream. They could eat it after, and then they can write inside.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to just be their name. It can be shapes. It can be numbers. Anything.
Or just letters.
Or just letters in general. And then.
And moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandpa, they're going to make a mess. Just
yeah, it is. It can be kind of contained.
Sneeze here.
Just as long as it's a little contained.
I mean, we've even made a mess. I mean, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. That's part of being a kid.
Exactly.
And then their responsibility can be to clean it up.
That's right.
And then anything to kind of pinch, like this seems so simple, but to a 5-year-old that doesn't have good pincher grip, these are just some tongs I found. You could use a chip bag. You can use a clip, to clip it. And it also is a good eye-hand coordination.
Right.
Taking some clothespins and just having them clip it to a bowl, which seems so easy to us, but to little ones it's not as easy.
And you can kill two birds with one stone by having, let's do 3, let's do 5,
Yes.
let's do 2, and that's helping.
Or you can make a pattern. Let's do a pink, a wood, another pink, another wood. It's endless of what you could do.
You all know that it's going to be a little different because the kids have been away from school for so long, and so moms and dads and aunts and uncles, everybody, just be a little more patient with them.
Right.
Getting back in that routine is going to be hard, but Ms. Thompson, you've given great things for everyone in the household to participate in, to get them ready and to get ahead of schedule.
Well, thank you for having me, and I hope that their kindergarten year starts off great.
Absolutely. All right, for Ms. Thompson, I'm Greg Ellis. This is Distance Learning 101. We'll see you next Friday.